FPL is finally back, and after a long international break, we have all come back to teams full of yellow flags, including the likes of Gabriel and Semenyo. And in today's video, I will be revealing my Game Week 12 team selection, exactly what I am doing with those players, and of course, a deep dive on all of those final hot topics. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you drop a like, and of course, hit that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get to today's video. So first up, a quick recap on how my team is currently looking going into Game Week 12. If you haven't watched my previous videos, how very dare you, but I'll try and refresh your memory nonetheless. So going into this week, we got 2 free transfers, 1.5 million in the bank, and like most of you right now who are probably watching this, I've got yellow flags. We got the yellow flag on Gabriel. I should have put a yellow flag on Semenyo and Enzo. Those are both currently yellow flagged in the game. From a context perspective, I'm not worried about Enzo. He didn't travel with Argentina for the international break, and we knew he was carrying a knock. Maresca came out and said that before the international break. So the fact that he didn't travel is indicated to me that it was more of a rest rather than them actually concerned about him ahead of Game Week 12. So I personally think Enzo will be fine. But again, the same applies to all of these players. If you haven't made a transfer yet, wait until the Friday press conferences. We might get some more information on these players, and we might even have a curveball thrown on other players we didn't know were injured. In terms of Semenyo, the latest is that he actually hasn't been pictured in training on Thursday. Not ideal. I think we've all been a little bit confused about Semenyo in the situation. Part of it was that he got substituted in the 55th minute. Sounded like an injury. Then it looked like he was engaged on social media, so we all thought it was nothing to do with the injury. And now it looks like it could be something like an injury. So again, Semenyo is a big one in terms of waiting for the press conference news, but I will talk about some replacements. And of course, the big one is going to be Gabriel. I think you've seen the news now. It looks like it's at least a month out. And for me, as the price will continue to fall, really, I think it is time to sell him. Even though if you look at my team as an example, if I were to just keep Gabriel, I've got loads of great replacements. I could bring in Anderson for the home game against Sunderland. I could bring in Rodon for the home game against Aston Villa. Even more, if Semenyo was ruled out, I have got Iliman and Dye to come in for his away game against Man United. So in terms of the actual team, it's looking okay. The plan was to roll the transfer. However, with the Gabriel injury news, I will be looking to sell him and then monitoring the situation on Semenyo and Enzo. So let's take a look now ahead of Game Week 12 and of course my team selection. So as always, fixtures are king when we are making our transfers going into any game week, in particular Game Week 12, because the next few weeks are really, really significant. And I'm just going to quickly highlight them for those that haven't watched my previous videos. So as we know, Game Week 12 is coming about off the back of an international break. That always can bring up some sort of fatigue or injuries that we didn't know about. Then we have got European football that is indicated by the red line there. Then in Game Week 13, of course, we have got afterwards. But importantly, in Game Week 14, we have got a midweek game week. So it is weekend, midweek, back to the weekend in Game Week 15. So again, if you are now looking to possibly buy someone like a Jeremy Doku in your teams, yes, it is a difficult entry point against Newcastle. You get the Game Week 13 game against Leeds, but do you actually get the Game Week 14 fixture, which is only a few days after that in Game Week 13? So we need to monitor, of course, the midweek in Game Week 14. This is the time to buy those players that offer you guaranteed game time as opposed to those punts that also come off around the 60th minute. I think those are better saved for maybe those that are free hitting, and I've indicated when possibly I might look to free hit in Game Week 13 and look to target, of course, those opportunities in Man City with the Leeds game and also possibly some differentials like Spurs at home against Fulham. But my chip strategy hasn't been completely confirmed just yet. That might be dictated by the injury news that we were to get. In terms of Game Week 15, this is really important because this is your final game week to use up all of your transfers before Game Week 16 when they are going to top us up to 5 free transfers. I have banged on about this every single video, but I really think it's important. You've got to make sure over the next 4 game weeks, if you are stashing away transfers, you use them. Otherwise, you're not capitalizing on the Game Week 16 5 free transfers. So take myself as an example. 2 free transfers. If I was to use one here, then of course I'll be in a situation if I free hit it in Game Week 13, I would be having 2 in Game Week 14. I got to use those either in game week 14 or game week 15, and identifying the player and team that you want to get is really important, because then you want to get all of those 5 in game week 16 and almost give yourself the opportunity to reset your team if you wanted to, or carry those 5 free transfers into future game weeks. And of course, the final thing is that in game week 19 is the final week that you can use your chips. So, of course, it isn't the final time we get chips, because we get them all refreshed in the second part of the season, which is really important to note. But take myself as an example. Free hit and triple captains still available to use. I got to use those over this period. So planning appropriately has become even more important than ever. So take a note of this if you need to. Let me know any questions in the comment section. I just want to kind of every week give you a reminder, and the time is ticking, that you've got to use your chips, you've got to use your transfers ahead of game week 16 and game week 19 deadlines. So before my game week 12 team selection, let's take a look at some game week 12 hot topics. Now, I have gone through pretty much all of these in detail on my top transfers video previously, and before that my transfer plan. So if you want a bit more of a thorough in-depth look in terms of the underlying numbers, I would recommend checking out those previous videos where I've kind of already done that. But if you want the quick to the point answers, then you are in the right place. So first up, let's talk about Gabriel. The best Gabriel replacements. You've probably seen him on every single thumbnail in these videos throughout the international break, and it is because it's an important topic. First things first, I think we're in a place right now where wait until the Friday press conference if you haven't already sold him, but the indications suggest that it's going to be at least a month. And in terms of the fixture period, that could take us between game week 12 and game week 16, him missing. That is too long of a period for you to just sit there, keep the most expensive defender in your team on the bench in the hope that he doesn't have a little setback during his recovery and he does actually extend the time that he is going to be out. It's not worth it while his price continues to fall and replacements start to rise in price. So selling him, I think, is the right move, unless Arteta comes out and goes, everyone's talking rubbish, he is actually available. I'm not expecting that. For me, if you're in a position where you don't own any Arsenal, it is very simple. Get yourself back on Arsenal. I think Jurgen Timber is still the guy to own. If you still have double Arsenal, take me as an example, rare between the sticks, and then you have Gabriel. I think it's a bit more difficult. I do think the next 2 fixtures pose some questions for Arsenal. Spurs, who are good on the road, and then Chelsea away. So it could be an opportunity to go against the double Arsenal defence. And if you were to do so, I think Van Dijk, even though it's very template, is the way to go. Now, I get it. People in the comment section saying about Liverpool being poor, and it is buying Van Dijk on the assumption that Liverpool might turn a corner, and you are taking that risk if you buy Van Dijk. In terms of Semenyo, now, as I mentioned, the most recent news that we've seen is that he hasn't been pictured in training. So it is really, really difficult to understand what is going on. I'm hoping Iraola will be very honest in his press conference and tell us exactly what is going on, or at least we get some sort of indication from some press outlet out there. Fingers crossed. In terms of the situation for him, if it's only a game week or 2, I think there is a position where you could just keep him. Because if that is a situation, then your bench might allow you just to bench him for a week, bring him back in for game week 13. If he's out for 13, bench him, bring him back in for 14. The thing that I want to say is that if he's definitely ruled out for game week 12, we spoke about how game week 14 is a midweek fixture. So if he's out for 12, hopeful for game week 13, you could put yourself in a situation where he misses 12, isn't fit for 13, and then by default, he probably isn't going to be fit for 14 either because it's midweek. And then all of a sudden you get to game week 15 and then he hasn't played any minutes. And then you're like, oh God, now he might just get half an hour off the bench to build up his fitness. Of course, I might be exaggerating the situation. We might get the news that Semenyo is fit, but you just got to have this in the back of your mind. 1 game week over this period could very easily lead to 2 and 3 because of the congested fixture. If you're looking to sell, if you can get to Bukayo Saka, I like it. But I think Mbeumo, Cunha are really easy replacements. Just remember African Cup of Nations in the back of your mind for any replacements that you're bringing in. Now, the big one is going to be captains. Who are the top 3 captains? So I'm just going to put it out there. This is the week for you to go with whatever your gut is telling you. Because Erling Haaland right now has been the default captain each and every week. And he has arguably the toughest fixture away against Newcastle. No Dan Burn, it's worth noting, but do they have good defenders regardless? Yes, they do. He'll be in a tough physical duel with the likes of Chow in that team. So I think it is a real great week for you to go with whatever you're thinking. I've got a top three here. Bryan Mbeumo currently third at home against Everton. He's been in good form recently, and Everton have been a little bit Jekyll and Hyde. Haaland second away against Newcastle. It's just because his numbers have been fantastic. I think Newcastle are rightly so a tough game to play. But do I think City are just a better team right now in this present moment? I do. But number one is going to be Bukayo Saka. I think Spurs defensively are still a little bit suspect. But do I get this gut feeling right now that Saka is going to walk away with a monster haul? Not really. And that is why this week is completely open to your interpretation. If Mateta away against Wolves is your guy, go there. If Bruno Fernandes at home against Everton is your guy, do it. This is your free hit week for captaincy is what I'm trying to say. Quickly one on Doku. I have quite strong opinions on this one. I'm seeing him as a top 5 transfer in. I wouldn't be touching him. As we said, Newcastle away is a tough enough fixture. I don't think you need to bring in Doku for this. I think you could consider him for game week 13, in particular if you're free hitting. What a great player to bring in as a 1 week punt. And it's worth noting, the misconception of him has kind of passed. He isn't that rotated player anymore in this Man City team based on his form, but he could be. Marmoush back from injury. All it takes is Doku a couple of games underwhelming and Marmoush takes minutes away from him. I wouldn't be buying him this week. And finally, the top 3 differentials for this week. Number 3, I'm going to go Konate. I think there is that common misconception or fair assumption that Konate is an injury-prone player, but he started every game this season. And Liverpool are not blessed with replacements. So if you can't get to Virgil van Dijk, but you want a piece of Liverpool, I don't mind Konate. He is good on his numbers, better than that of Van Dijk in many. Number 2 is going to be Minter. I think he consistently is on this list. I think he's great and his ownership is ridiculously low if you want a 6 million midfielder. And number 1 is going to be Cunha. Sesko out for a month. I'm interested to see what that's going to do for Cunha. I prefer Mbeumo. But when we're talking about differentials, now there is like a 30% difference between Cunha and Mbeumo. I feel like that's big enough to maybe go for the lowly owned guy and hope that you hit the haul. So finally, moving into my Game Week 12 team selection, and we are making a defensive transfer, that is for sure. But of course, my team is one that, probably similar to yours, where my defence actually looks pretty damn good. So in terms of the goalkeepers, it's a no-brainer. Raya starts every game that I own him at home against Spurs. And of course, like I mentioned, I'm in a position where I had Gabriel, or I still own Gabriel, but I've also got some other Arsenal coverage defensively. If I didn't have Raya, I'd be bringing in Timber in a heartbeat. I am certain of it. Yes, you could get game week 14 where Ben White plays instead of Timber, but I think Timber is just playing so well right now that Timber is going to remain the player in that Arsenal team. But I own Raya. And I don't feel like I want to go double Arsenal over the next few weeks. And I think probably that is a short-term mindset that I have right now, possibly. But I feel like I want to go for the guy who possibly can do the same of what Gabriel was doing. And what I mean by that is clean sheet potential, defensive contributions, a bit of threat in the final third from set pieces. And I think Van Dijk is that guy. Yes, I know Liverpool have been poor defensively, but I am just going for the fixtures that they have in front of them. Forest is a good fixture. They got Sunderland a couple of game weeks' time. I know Sunderland have been good, but I still fancy Liverpool to beat Sunderland. So Van Dijk is going to be my guy. If you want a real deep dive into my reasonings, make sure you check out my previous videos where I kind of have done that. But I just think Van Dijk suits my team with Raya between the sticks as my Arsenal coverage. In terms of the other 3, we're going to play a back 4 as of right now. Richards away against Wolves, Anderson at home against Sunderland, and Senesi at home against West Ham, with Rodon on the bench at home against Villa. While all those look great, when we progress throughout my team, you'll see that I'm in a position where I'm benching actually some really good attacking players. So I will have a bit of a benching dilemma closer to the deadline of whether I lean towards those attackers or do I stick with the defenders who offer pretty much guaranteed defensive contributions, and I would say some decent clean sheet odds. Anderson, weirdly enough, probably has the toughest fixture against a flying Sunderland team, but again, do I back him to get defensive contributions? I probably do. So that is the plan, Gabriel to Van Dijk, but I will show you in a minute why that could be somebody else depending on Semenyo. So moving into my Game Week 12 midfielders, and there are 2 here that just pick themselves automatically. Bruno Fernandes at home against Everton and Ismail Assar away against Wolves. Completely fine with those 2 options. It's the other 2 that cause me a bit of a headache right now. First up is Enzo. I think we've all had the assumption that he's just been rested over the international break and he will be fully fit and available. And I personally have that assumption as well. But I've got to wait for that Friday press conference, because if Maresca does come out and say Enzo's been managing something, we got a really big Champions League game midweek after this, and then they got Arsenal on the weekend, I will be casting some doubts on whether Enzo actually does play in this game. And if you don't get the Burnley game, you then have Arsenal. And as we know, Chelsea's fixtures are a bit mixed longer term. And I have my doubts over Enzo regardless, especially with the return of Cole Palmer in the near future. What does that do for Enzo? I can only see him regressing in the team, with João Pedro still playing okay. And of course, Estevan making his way into the team. I don't see a place where Enzo could operate in that front attacking four. So I think there will be a time where Enzo needs to leave the team, but it won't be this week unless we get news that he is going to be out. But I do have my concerns about his minutes. The big one's going to be Semenyo, and this dictates exactly what I do this week. With the training pictures for him not being him is a slight concern. If we get bad news that he is out, then this could lead me to make my 2 free transfers. And what it could mean is that I get rid of Gabriel and go to Canate. I know the risks, he's injury prone, yada, yada, yada. But allowing me to go to Canate will give me the opportunity to upgrade Semenyo to Bukayo Saka. Now, I'm going to be honest, I almost want Semenyo to be available because I love Saka. He is one of my favourite players. But Spurs and then Chelsea, I don't feel that gut feeling to desperately bring him in. But if I have the opportunity to bring him in for Semenyo, I probably am going to take it. But I feel like Saka is one of those I could take on over the next few weeks. I do have Ndai on the bench that could easily replace Semenyo. So if we get kind of varied information, I probably will just keep Semenyo, have Ndai as a first sub, and he will replace Semenyo in the worst case scenario. But I'm hoping for some clarity on the midfielders. But like I said, if we get news that Semenyo is out and also a doubt for game week 13, then that might change up my plans and doing instead of Van Dijk to Canate and then Semenyo up to Bukayo Saka. Take a look at my game week 12 forwards, and as you can see here, we've got the combination of Erling Haaland and Mateta up front. Those two pick themselves. Bit unfortunate that Thiago is on the bench right now, but I can't find a way to get him into the team. I know he's a penalty taker. I know he's one of the most bought players going into game week 12, but as of right now, I just don't know whether I can do it or not, putting him in the team ahead of anybody else. So it's a bit controversial. Others are buying him in, hoping that he bags another brace. I'm in a position where I'm benching him right now. Let me know in the comment section maybe if I've got my team selection wrong here. Maybe I should find a way to bring in Thiago. But Haaland away against Newcastle, Mateta away against Wolves. Very, very easy for myself in terms of who to start. The big question mark, of course, is going to be captaincy. Now, for me, this is really, really difficult because I want to be different. Of course I do. But with my rank right now in a place where I'm quite content after the last few weeks being really good, I don't see any standout options. I do think there are good options this week, but do I think there are any better than Erling Haaland in my particular team? The answer is no, but what I am saying and what I said at the start is go with your gut. Go with whatever you feel you want to go for. So for me, it is currently Erling Haaland as my captain, vice captaincy on Bruno Fernandes. But if I had Bukayo Saka in my team, I think I would go for Saka rather than Erling Haaland. So that's the plan right now. Gabriel to Van Dijk, captaincy on Erling Haaland. But of course, I will be doing a deadline live stream in the lead up if I make any changes or if we get any sort of different updates regarding Semenyo. Let me know what you're doing in the comment section. Hopefully this lands a green arrow. Yes, guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's video. Looking at my Game Week 12 team selection, as we said, we're waiting for that big news on Semenyo, and hopefully we do get it. Otherwise, my plans look pretty much locked. If you have any questions, please do put them in the comment section. As always, thank you so much for tuning into this video. If you haven't already, please do consider dropping a like, hitting that subscribe button, and importantly, have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.